In this section, we're going to talk about mastering one song at a time, where a client may only bring you one piece of music that you'll need to master, and that's a lot easier than trying to master a whole series of audio files at the same time, because in that situation, you're trying to make all of the files sound complementary to one another. Whereas when a client brings you a single audio file, then you can just do what you feel like is necessary to make it sound mastered by itself. So the first thing I'm going to do is load a file, and you can do this a couple of different ways. You can either go to the file browser up here in the upper left-hand corner. If you can't see that file browser tab, make sure that your workspace is set to either default or complete. Mine is set to complete. And that gives you a small window to navigate through your folders and files. And then when you find a file that you want to load, you can just double click on it. Another way to do that is to drop and drag out of either Windows File Explorer or from the Mac OS Finder. And another way is to use the File tab in the Audio Editor and make sure that you're on the Open command under Audio File and the browser, and here you have another navigational tool to find the files that you want to load. But I'm just going to use the file browser itself, so I'll click back on the File tab here to get our editor back to normal. And here are a couple of files that we could use to master. Let's look at these files first. We can see that the first file is at 44.1 kilohertz and 32-bit floating point as far as a bit depth, but then these other two files are at 48 kilohertz and 24 bits. The bit rate won't matter quite so much right now because once we start to process these with some mastering plugins, it's going to process it in 64-bit floating point anyway. But the sample rate is a little bit concerning to me right now because if this is going to go onto an audio CD, it will need to be 44.1 kilohertz. So we may want to resample these to 44.1 kilohertz. Let's double click on this first file that's 44.1 kilohertz. And you can see that somebody actually added the markers to this file, which is really nice to be able to see the different sections of the song. And now the first thing I like to do is actually look at the audio file with my eyes because we're drawn visually to this display, and I want to zoom it all the way out to see the entire audio file. So the easiest way to do that is to click and drag on this timeline above the waveform display, and then drag your mouse up to zoom in or down to zoom out. So I'm just so used to grabbing that and giving it a quick flick up to look at the entirety of this audio file. And we can see that it looks pretty loud. Things are running right to the rails here, but just how loud is it? The other thing I like to do to find out where the loudness is sitting right now is to come to the Analyze tab of the editor and then come over to Global Analysis. The keyboard shortcut for that is Shift and Y. And so that's a good keyboard shortcut to learn because the Global Analysis is a fast tool to show you all sorts of different data about a particular audio file. So in the lower right-hand corner of the Global Analysis window, click the Analyze button, and it'll take just a moment depending on how long the file is. We can look at the peaks. The digital peaks on both the left and right channel are below 0. The true peak is actually above 0. It's at plus 0.8 dB on the left and 0.4 dB on the right. So we may need to address that with a mastering limiter to correct any clipping that's over the true 0 dB level. And then let's look at the loudness. You can look at raw loudness, but what I like to use is the EBU R128 standard. And look at this figure. The integrated loudness of this file is minus 11 LUFS, or loudness units full scale. So this particular file isn't going to be in need of any master limiting except to maybe keep it from exceeding 0 dB on the top. And so when you get a file like this that somebody has already, it looks like they've already mastered it a little bit because it's nicely brought up to a good loud standard level, but you may actually want to drop the gain of a file down if you wanted the mastering limiter process that you are going to apply to the file to have a little bit more control over the loudness. Then you can analyze for pitch and some extras like finding DC offset or errors. If you wanted to have it find possible glitches, you'll just need to enable that. But the find clipped samples is on by default, and you can see that it didn't find any digital clipping. It's only that true peak clipping that we may need to address. So the global analysis is a really nice way to quickly find out more information about that file. Let's load one of these other audio files and do another global analysis, and we'll just see what the differences are. I'm going to zoom this all the way out, and this is a nice loud file too, but not nearly as loud as the other file. But it is at 24-bit. Let's go ahead and resample this to 44.1 kilohertz. So we'll go to Process, then we'll find Resample. That will call up a small window where we can choose the desired sample frequency, and resampling happens very, very quickly. Now the file that we have edited has a little asterisk next to the file name on the tab itself. That just indicates that we have changed something about this file. So I'll want to save this new version of this file as a 44.1 kilohertz file. And while most programs have a save as command of either controller command plus shift and S, in Wavelab it's a little different. To do a save as, you just hold down the shift key and type S. And this, I'm going to change the name a little bit to 44 so that I know that this is the 44 kilohertz version of this audio file. That way we leave the original 48K file in its original position. And I'll just go ahead and save this file. And now that I've saved it, that asterisk goes away. And let's quickly do a global analysis of this file. So we'll go to Analyze and Global Analysis and just reanalyze. See here, both the digital and true peaks are below 0. The loudness is quite a bit quieter than the other file. It's at minus 16.9 LUFS. So with this file, we may need to add some master limiting to get it up to a little bit louder standard. And then we already know that there aren't any clipped samples. So using that global analysis and seeing where the audio file is visually as far as the loudness is a great way to get started with an audio file. And next, let's talk about configuring the loudness meter.